are most talked about economic injury disaster loans and the advances. Those are available right now. And the Paycheck Protection Program, which is set to be available tomorrow for people to apply for with their local lenders. So since many of you have probably been on this before, I'm really going to skip through a lot of this quickly, because I think at this point we really know who's eligible and what this all means. So that way we can kind of get to what you really want to know right now and get to your questions. I will share with you that I've got a couple of my team members are on as panelists. So if you're entering questions in the Q&A function on this, they will be monitoring that and getting answers as. So what businesses are eligible to apply? That's going to be just about anything, agricultural operations or not. And a lot of private nonprofits will be, which is a different scenario than we're used to normally. What we're looking at for loan approval on the economic injury disaster loans is your credit history, ability to repay, and that you are an eligible business. Economic injury loans, these are the ones that are up to $2 million. The interest rate is 7.5%, 2.75 for nonprofits, and the payments are deferred for 12 months. These are going to be basically your working capital needs. There's a lot of things you can use them for: your fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid if the disaster had not occurred. So how much can you borrow? And that's going to be based on what your 6 months of operating expenses are, what the new application is asking for. And I will go through the new application again. Gross revenues for 12 months prior to the disaster date, which is officially January 31st. Cost of goods sold. We do get a lot of questions around that, but that is a number that you can easily grab from your tax return. I believe it's Schedule C. If you are a rental property owner, you can apply for those lost rents, commercial or residential. Loans over $200,000, we know that there's going to be probably more analysis that they're going to ask for. Additionally, loans over $200,000 are going to require a personal guarantee. These funds will be given out as one disbursement, so you'll get one lump sum payment essentially. Over $25,000 will require collateral. We will be looking at business assets for that. We are not securing your personal residence for economic injury disaster loans, and they do not have to be fully collateralized. So we're not going to decline it just based on a lack of collateral. SBA will take what they can get. So let's skip through this part and let's go to what's not eligible. So agricultural enterprises are not eligible for the economic injury loans. Small agricultural cooperatives would be, and then those engaged in aquaculture would be as well. Religious organizations are generally ineligible, but they can be eligible based on the secular social services they provide. So that would be things like a daycare or a school. Charitable organizations are not eligible. And then people that derive more of their income from gambling, casinos, and racetracks. So the SBA's economic injury loan is different. This is not through a bank. These are through SBA directly. There is no cost to apply. There's no obligation to take the loan. You will apply directly online with SBA. And we're going to go through the new application process now. Basically, the address sba.gov/disaster, you'll see a big yellow bar at the top, and you're going to click here, and that's going to get you to this new online application. So I will tell you, if you applied prior to Monday of this week, and you are interested in getting a advance on this economic disaster loan, you must apply again through this process. We did not have the authority prior to Friday of last week when the CARES Act was signed by the president. We did not have the authority prior to that to do these advances, but we do now. So this became available Monday. So if you're interested in that advance, you're going to have to go through this process I'm getting ready to go through to qualify and ask for that advance. This is a very simple process, simple application process. People are going through it pretty quickly. They estimate the application time is 2 hours and 10 minutes. But if you have your stuff together, if you don't have a very complicated ownership structure, it's not going to take that 2 hours and 10 minutes. First thing we're going to do is verify that you are eligible. So you're going to choose what kind of business you are right here. And then again, we're looking here to make sure that the business is small. And then we're going to make sure that you're not ineligible based on any of these things. So basically, the applicant's not delinquent on child support. This is not an agricultural enterprise. You're not deriving the majority of your income from things like gambling. You're not lobbying, and also this is the one too that says very clearly that you cannot be a state, local, or municipal entity. So we've got a lot of questions lately about county and city owned hospitals, and at this point that those are not eligible for this program, but stay tuned. We're waiting to see what else may become available. So what you're going to put in here is essentially your business information. Make sure that you use the exact legal name of your business, and then you can use your trade name, whatever that might be. You're going to choose your organization type. So how is your business structured? So you've got everything here from an LLC, general partnerships, C Corps. Make sure you choose exactly how your business is structured. We're going to ask if you're a nonprofit. If your answer is yes, then there's going to be a couple different questions that you will answer. Is the applicant a franchise? Franchises are eligible, but they must be an approved franchise in SBA's franchise directory. So make sure you look into that. Again, what we said is that it's going to be, they're asking for your gross revenues for 12 months prior to the disaster, as well as the cost of goods sold. And if you need help with figuring out cost of goods sold, and you don't have an accountant or a bookkeeper that's been doing this for you, or you don't have that on your tax returns, then we've got our partners at the SBDC, as well as SCORE, and some of your other organizations that will be able to help you kind of get to that figure. If you are a nonprofit organization, then what we're looking for is the 12 months, your operating costs, again, prior to the disaster, and then what your operating expenses were. And that's only going to be, operating expenses is only going to be for those secular social services that we talked about, such as the daycare, camps, schools, those sorts of things. And then you're going to need to describe that here in this last box about what kind of service it is you're providing. And then at this point, we're going to ask too if you've received some other compensation. So for this particular disaster at this point right now, the answer to that is likely no. But that could be, this application is actually open through December of this year. So there is possibility that you might be applying later for this, and you would have received some other funds, such as through the Paycheck Protection Program. If that becomes the case, then you'll need to describe that in this section. We're looking here for your business address, and it's got to be your physical address, your business phone, and then I really strongly suggest that you put your cell phone number here as an alternative. We are going to ask for that in the owner information, but put it here so to make sure that when your application is in process, that they have a way to get a hold of you. We expect that, the primary method is going to be by email, but we want to make sure that when the loan officer has your application and is looking through, if they have questions, they really need to be able to get in touch with you at that time. And then, of course, additional contact information. Now, we're looking here too for the date that the business was established and how long you've owned it. So there's been some concerns I've heard from some businesses about, I've only been in business for 3 months. Apply anyway. There's not a strict requirement that it's 12 months if you start things. There are ways to figure your operating expenses are, and there's no cost to apply, so please do apply anyway. When we get into some of the other programs, there's going to be a requirement that you have been in business since, I think it's like February 15th of this year. So, it's not that it's unavailable to people that haven't been in business. There's just going to be a few more questions about, the long-term viability and how you were doing before all of this happened. So then you're going to get into what kind of business it is. There's a whole lot of options here. You can surely find the one that best fits your type of business. And then they're going to ask for even more details. So in my example, I chose that my business activity was an eating and drinking establishment. And then you get into, okay, what kind of eating and drinking establishment? And for my example, I chose that I'm an ice cream shop. And then we want to know how many employees you had as of the day of the disaster. So you'll have to think back to January 31st. There's a possibility that maybe you've had to let some folks go in the meantime, but put down how many employees you had back when the disaster first happened. And here's where we get to your business information, your ownership information. So the idea here is that what we're trying to do is get down to the person. So the question, is your business owned by an entity? So maybe, I think I put in here that my Sarah's Ice Cream Shop is actually owned by ABC LLC, which turns out I'm the owner of that as well. So you put all of that in here. What we're looking for too is the information on anybody that's got more than 20% ownership of your business, whether that's an individual or an entity. So if you choose yes, that your business is an entity, then you're going to come down through here and choose who that entity is. And then you'll get into ownership information that entity as well. If you are not owned by an entity, then it's just you answer no, and then you're going to put your you and whoever else are owners in that business. So maybe you've got a husband and wife, they're 50-50 on this, and they're just operating under their social security number, they're not an LLC, then you would say, no, I'm not owned by a business entity, and then you're going to put in the ownership information for that 50-50. So again, if we're talking about, if your if your business is owned by another business, then you're going to choose what kind of business that is and all of the information that comes along with that. And it's going to ask you what's the ownership percentages. So what we're looking for here is that if the business applicant is owned by another business entity, then you're going to have to provide information on that entity as part of this application, and you're going to have to sign the guarantee. So then we get down into who's the individual that owns it. And so you'll come down through here, and I didn't capture the screenshot enough. Oh, wait, there it is. So right there in the middle, you'll see that my title is I'm owner, and I have 50% ownership of the business I'm applying for. So who has the other 50%? I'm going to come here and choose to add an additional owner. And in this case, I chose that Wayne Bell is the additional owner, and he also has 50%. You can go through this. If you make a mistake, you could remove those owners. You can add as many additional owners as you need to complete your application. So then you're at step 3, which is near about the final step of the application process. And these are these things that you're going to have to attest to, that no, you haven't been convicted of a criminal offense, you're not debarred from government contracting, you're not under indictment for specific charges, and you've not been convicted of something in the last 6 months. So take a look at these and make sure that you answer them truthfully. And then, because we know that our partners are helping, or you may be using somebody else to help you do this application, they would need to put their number here, their information here, and if they're the person that you want just discussing this with the SBA loan officer, then you've got to give that permission here if someone helped you. And here's where we get to the advance part, the very last part of this. Yes, I would like to be considered for an advance of up to $10,000. Up to, it won't be guaranteed that it's 10, is up to 10,000. So if you are interested in that, you'll check the box and give us the account number and routing number. Again, I'll remind people that if you yourself or you are working with someone that applied before Monday of this week, and they are interested in the advance, they will have to go through this process again to get it. That will not affect their current application that was submitted another way. People will not lose their place in line. We're processing these in order of the application numbers. I will tell you that you are getting, when you do this, you will get a new application number, but don't worry, everything is getting put together and you're not going to lose your place for the first application that you submitted. I say all that to say is that the advances are supposed to come very quickly. In fact, we would expect, based on what their goal processing time is, I think 3 days. So the first applications would have come in on Monday. So I would suspect that we would start hearing about people getting their advances as early as today. So the rest of the process does take longer. We've been saying that it's up to 3 weeks for the processing of the full loan. It could be longer based on demand. So that's why the advance comes quickly. And if you need it, I encourage you to go ahead and apply for that right away. And so then the last part you're going to get to is that you're certifying that everything that you have put on here is true. You can go through and read all of that. There are some things that you must certify, such as you're not a business that denies benefits to anybody based on age, color, race, those sorts of things. You're not discriminating against folks. Then there's also some additional statements through the executive orders and additional laws that you can read through. And you click down there on that link and get to those. So you check the box and say, I certify that this is all true. And then you're going to get to the point where you can review what you've input. What's great here is that when you go through and start reviewing all of these screens that you already submitted your information, if you see anything that's wrong or anything that you need to add, or I didn't quite get my cost of goods sold correct, you can make that edit here. You do not have to start over. You don't have to go back through the screens. You'll just make those edits here at your review your application summary. And so then when you're ready, you say that you're not a robot and you submit. So that's pretty much it as far as the way to apply for that. Some things that you need to know about this process is that there's no user registration. So you can't save your information and come back later to finish the application. Make sure you've got your stuff together before you start, or you're just going to have to keep starting over if you get kicked to leave for some reason. We do believe that these are going to be processed. The advances will be processed in as little as 3 business days. Again, I've said it a couple times, but if you're interested in this advance and you had to apply another way, you must apply again to get the advance. So what is the advance? Let's talk a little bit more about the advance. It's up to $10,000. If it's approved, you can use it for payroll and other operating expenses. And we do know that this advance will be forgiven, even if you ultimately are not approved for a loan. So if you need help with this, I know a lot of folks are questioning the cost of goods. And if you need some help with figuring out how to input your information in here, please reach out to any of our partners with the SBDCs, SCORE. Some of you are in proximity to a Women's Business Center or a Veterans Business Outreach Center. And then, of course, we've been sharing all of this information with your area chambers of commerce and economic development groups. So there's a lot of help out there. Be sure and look for it. So one of the things that we're going to tell you on this is, if you need that advance, submit your application as soon as possible. If more funds are needed, if you get the full loan approved and you need more funds, you can request an increase by submitting supporting documents and making a request. It's not going to be that you have to reapply. Again, this part of the program is open through December 31st of this year. You also can request a reduction in your loan amount if you don't need the full amount. If your loan request is denied, or if you have already received a denial, please reach out to the customer service center either by email or calling them. The conditions are changing daily as more things become available. And so don't wait. And you do have 6 months to request a reconsideration, but go ahead and request that reconsideration now, because things may have changed since you first applied maybe 2 weeks ago. We know that there are other things that may be requested by the loan officer when they start reviewing your items, and these are some of those things, especially when we start looking at loans in larger amounts. Again, these loans are available up to $2 million. So when we start looking at loans over 200,000, they may be asking you for some more information to support those requests. So now let's talk about Paycheck Protection Program, and I still didn't fix that typo. So this is the one that was authorized that we've all been hearing about and waiting for. This was authorized last week when that law was enacted on Friday evening of last week. So this is the one that's going to be offered through local banks with an SBA guarantee. So here's what we know about it. And I will tell you is that, you know, these are things that our partners have provided that we know, and things that Treasury has put out. So Treasury has put out a lot of information on their website about how this is going to work. They even have the application that's posted there. So if you just Google US Treasury PPP, you're going to be taken to a lot of good information about this program. So Friday, I guess that's tomorrow, the Paycheck Protection Program is supposed to be launched. What this program is to help keep employees on the payroll. We're still waiting on some additional information as far as the exact standard operating procedures, but you are going to do this through your local lending institution. Oh, excuse me. So, and as soon as we've got any additional information, of course, we are going to blast that out through every available media that we've got at our fingertips. So what I want to clear, first of all, is that we've seen a whole lot of individuals, organizations, and that sort of thing going through I think it's 832 pages of legislation, taking the time themselves to go through and kind of analyze and determine what that means. But what I want to caution everybody is the things that are going to count are the things that are put out by SBA and Treasury. Those are the agencies that are charged with interpreting the legislation and establishing the rules for how this program will work. So we want to make sure that whatever we put out to you is right, so that there's not questions later. It's very hard to take back misinformation. Oh, and I do apologize that I have to keep pausing. I'm struggling with some allergies. So what we know, if you go here, like I said, if you Google US Treasury PPP, the first thing that's going to come up is a fact sheet that they have published. I trust this information because it was published by US Treasury. And here are some of the big things that came out of that fact sheet that Treasury has released. All the loan terms are going to be the same for everybody. So regardless of the amount, how large, how small, they're all going to be the same. I will say that is also the case with the economic injury disaster loans from SBA. The loan terms are the same. The loan amounts, this is the one that everybody's excited about because this is possible to get these loans forgiven, either in part or their entirety. But you must know that you've got to use the funds from the Paycheck Protection Program will have to be used for the eligible expenses in order to be forgiven. And that's going to be payroll costs. In most cases, mortgage interest, rent, and utility costs over the 8-week period that starts after the loan is made. Although we do believe there will be ability to go back to February 15th on this. This will not payroll. Hold on one second. Okay. Payroll expenses are capped at $100,000. So any employees that make more than $100,000 a year are not going to count for this program. So, and we also believe, and this is what Treasury is saying at this point, is because we do think there's going to be a lot of demand for this program. We think that you're going to have to use at least 75% of the amount that you're given for payroll in order for that to be forgiven. So what that means is that you can't use 75% of that must be for payroll. You can't exceed 25% for things like utilities and mortgage interest. So when can you apply? Tomorrow. What Treasury has said is that tomorrow small businesses and sole proprietorships can begin applying to cover payroll and other expenses. And here's the one that we've gotten a lot of questions about, and we don't have the answers yet, but independent contractors and self-employed individuals. Treasury is estimating that starting April 10th, that those folks will be able to apply to cover their payroll and certain other expenses. We don't have any other information yet what that looks like. The application form is out, also posted on Treasury. And you're going to have to provide your lender when you do apply. You can go to this site and look and see what the application looks like. I think it's 2 pages. And you're going to have to provide your lender with your payroll documentation. So how should you use the payroll protection funds? Payroll costs. That includes your benefits. Interest on mortgage obligations, if they were in place before February 15th. You must have a lease agreement in place before February 15th. And utilities for service where it began before February 15th. So basically, we're looking to say, were you already in that place? Did you already have that mortgage? Did you already have a lease prior to February 15th? And then those expenses will count. So what is counted in payroll? And we've also gotten a whole lot of questions here. So here's what Treasury says: salary, wages, commissions, and tips. Again, that's capped at $100,000 per employee. Employee benefits, any kind of allowance that you'd offered for separation or dismissal, group health care benefits, those insurance premiums. If you have retirement benefits you're paying, state and local taxes that are part of payroll. And for the sole proprietors and independent contractors, here's what it says: wages, commissions, incomes, but we still don't have exactly. We need more information on those folks. So how is a loan forgiven? Again, you have to use it for those eligible expenses to make sure that it will be forgiven. If you use the amount for anything other, if you use your paycheck protection funds for anything other than these allowable expenses over the 8 weeks, you're going to owe some money for those funds that you used on an ineligible expense for forgiveness. Again, we think that you're not going to be able to use more than 25% of those funds for non-forgivable items or for non-payments. If you have to let somebody go during this time, you're also going to owe some money back if you have to let someone go. And so it wouldn't be the full amount, but it's going to be reduced by commensurate to how you reduce your staff. So here's that is that your forgiveness is going to be reduced if you decrease your FTEs. If you cut their pay by more than 25%, you also will have your forgiveness amount reduced. But you will have, let's say you let somebody go before this became available, you've got time to rehire them and restore your full-time employment levels in order to qualify for the forgiveness. So now that we've talked about that this is for payroll, it's for your mortgage interest, it's for rent and utilities. So then what do you use if you were also doing the one directly from SBA, the economic injury disaster loan? What are you going to use those for? Well, that's for everything else that's not covered by Paycheck Protection Program. So this could be, other working capital needs that you may need for supplies to pay existing debts that your business has. And then also, because these funds are available through December 31st, Paycheck Protection ends on June 30th as it currently stands. The things that you would need to pay, payroll and that sort of thing, beyond the eight weeks that the Paycheck Protection Program is cover. So I have some great news, is that the SBDC has put together a really nice kind of side-by-side comparison. It is draft, and it's not official, it's not finalized, but if you use this site here, they've got a spreadsheet that's really nice that shows the economic injury loan side by side with the Paycheck Protection. They also include a column in there for the advances, and also some of the other programs that we have available, which would include the SBA debt relief program. So just quickly, I want to show you kind of what SBDC has put together on that comparison. So if we look at the two compared to each other, you go to economic injury, and again, that loan comes directly from SBA. Paycheck Protection is going to be through an SBA approved financial institution. I will tell you that in Kansas, I would say, a guess would be 75 to 80% of financial institutions already have that in place. And there is coming, it's not available yet, but an expedited process to get additional lenders through that process to get them to be approved financial institutions. Economic injury, as we talked about, the term is 30 years, up to $2 million. Interest rate is 3.75%. On the Paycheck Protection, that term is 2 years for anything that's not forgiven. The interest rate is 0.5%, and the amount that you can get is 2.5 times of your average monthly payroll. So basically 8 weeks of payroll plus a little bit, up to 10 million if you're a larger payroll business. Economic injury does require some collateral if your loan is over $25,000. Paycheck Protection does not require any collateral. It also does not require a personal guarantee, whereas economic injury, you don't have to provide a personal guarantee unless the loan is over $200,000. And then on economic injury, your payments are deferred for 12 months, and payments are deferred for 6 months for anything not forgiven on the Paycheck Protection. 100% forgiveness is possible if you are diligent about making sure you keep track of how you're using these funds and using them for those authorized expenses. As far as economic injury, the advanced portion may be forgiven. So one of the things I'll tell you is that if you end up with both of these, and let's say you get a $75,000 Paycheck Protection program loan to do payroll, and you also get a $10,000 economic injury advance, what's going to happen is that $10,000 will be forgiven, but that amount forgivable is taken off your Paycheck Protection forgiveness amount. So you have $75,000 that you took out. You're going to get $10,000 forgiven from the advance on economic injury. So therefore, the amount you can get forgiven on Paycheck Protection is now $65,000. So you end up with $10,000 at this 0.5% interest rate. Economic injury, again, these are available through December 31st. And at this moment, the Paycheck Protection applications and funds are only available through June 30th. So I know that was a lot, and there's a couple more things that I want to just share with you. There are scams everywhere. We've had people contacting us saying, is this a legitimate bank? They're offering me a Paycheck Protection loan at this interest rate or with this high application fee. Same way on the economic injury loans. So we know on economic injury loans, there's no immediate deadline to apply right now. I told you that December 31st is the cutoff for that. There is no cost. They're probably applying for the other one, but that's kind of depend. So if you have doubts about what someone is telling you or asking you for, please let us know. contact your local SBA staff, contact the SBDC, ask. Do not be taken by one of these scams. People are awful and they do these things and when we're at our most vulnerable and in a serious time of need. I'll also tell you too is that we don't locally have any ability to check the status of your application you may have already submitted for economic injury. If you want to do that, you're going to have to call the Disaster Customer Service Center. You should have your application number or confirmation number on hand if you've got it. That'll make things a little easier. Or you can also email the Disaster Customer Service Center at sba.gov. So that was a lot pretty quickly. And it looks like we've got about 23 minutes for questions. I'm going to put, this is our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. I would encourage you to use email, but you're more than welcome to call us. And if you do leave a voicemail because we are returning the calls that we get. It may be hours and hours before we get to you, but we will return all of the calls that we receive. So with that, Greg, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a few, and I do notice that some of the questions have been answered during the presentation by your staff, so thank you for that. So I'll start with the ones that are still open. First is, I've heard differently on two things and cannot find a definitive answer. Are payments to 1099 contractors included in the payroll type expenses? This came right at the EIDL presentation, so I'm assuming that has to do with that application. And the second, are partner owner guaranteed payments eligible for the payroll type expenses?
So that is in, if Janelle or Christy have any additional information, or if Michael is on, I think we don't know the answer quite yet to that. I think that's part of not exactly how it's going to be calculated, and that some business types won't apply until next week. Do Janelle or Christy or Michael have anything to add there?
I've been recommending people apply. This is Christy, but I'm not sure either.
Next question, are banks and/or bank holding companies eligible?
Christy, that one's you. I think we got that answer recently.
On the P3 program, we heard that they were, if they were within the 500 employees. I'm not sure on the economic injury. I would doubt it, but I've not heard specifically on that one.
Okay. If you own rental property, how will you predict what the loss of rents are?
That's a tough one. And so I've gotten that question a few times, actually. It's hard to, I think, and the only answer I can say is do your best. Maybe talk with an SBDC counselor or talk with your lender. But that's a tough one because people, the first was yesterday. So, you're not going to know for a little bit if people aren't going to be able to make their rent. I would suggest that when you talk with either the SBA loan officer, put in what your rents are, and talk with your loan officer and see what they feel like a better estimate would be. So what I will say is, again, what we've said is that if something changes, if you have an economic injury loan where you've got lost rents, is that you can, if it continues to go down, you do have the ability to come back and say, okay, I only estimated I was going to lose 50% of my rent. Well, now I'm up to 75%. I need more funds. And so you would make that request back to add funds to your loan amount.
Following up on a previous question that was answered, what if we use the PPP loan for permitted expenses such as payroll, rent, utilities, and the EIDL for other expenses? Is that acceptable?
That's the intention.
Got it. Can we use 2018 tax return information?
If you don't have I mean, yes, you could. That would be a way to estimate, but I would say if you don't have a profit and loss statement for 2019, which I would hope you'd have something along those lines. But if that's the best you can do on your estimate, then I would say yes, do it. But if at all possible, use your profit and if you don't have your tax return, at least use your profit and loss for 2019.
Can guarantee payments to partners be included in the payroll expenses for PPP?
We don't have the exact guidance on that yet, so I really don't want to speculate, but I would say read what the Treasury fact sheet says and talk with your lender, because that'll be covered under the PPP.
Understand that we can't have two loans for the same reason, but could a business get a PPP for payroll and rent and an EIDL for working capital other than payroll and rent?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
the intent.
Okay. If you're a nonprofit and don't have owners, what information do you put under ownership?
Christy, Janelle, or Michael, what have you learned on that?
I'm not sure. This is Christy. Maybe list board of directors, maybe?
We'll find out.
I'm not sure,
Okay.
yeah.
Can independent contractors get any assistance?
Yes, through either one.
Okay. The CARES Act provides expressly that if you get the $10,000 EIDL advance and a PPP loan, then the forgiveness on the PPP loan will be reduced by $10,000.
That's correct, and I covered that kind of toward the end.
Perfect. The next one is about slide presentations, and those will be made available to all the participants, and as well as much of this information that we've discussed is also on the Kansas SBDC.net website, and as will the recording of this be. And that's actually the next question. So we hope to have that up right away. We've been really getting pretty good about having it done within the day or first thing in the morning. Someone is asking for clarification about using the EIDL for expenses that exclude payroll and the PPP for strictly payroll is, and I think you've clarified that, and that is correct. You can do that, correct?
Yes, and that is the expectation.
Okay. This one, I think this might be the same one, but same type of question, but I'm not sure, so I'm gonna read it out and see what you think. The EIDL can be used for operating expenses, while the PPP only 25% can be used for mortgage, rent, utilities. So are you saying that if you get a PPP for payroll, you cannot have an EIDL for operating expenses?
No, that's
No.
not what we're saying. So,
Okay.
Right. So you get the PPP and you use that for payroll and the other qualified expenses, but that's only going to last you 8 weeks. And so then you've got the EIDL that can pay for everything else during that 8 weeks time. So whether that's, payments you owe to vendors, whether that is payments you have on existing loans, business loans. So just keep in mind, we can't use any of these funds to refinance or pay off any existing debt that you have. But let's say you already had a business loan through, you can use the EIDL funds to make payments on that loan. The idea is to keep you making your monthly obligations so that when this is over, you've got a chance to recover and you haven't, dug a hole for yourself or had to file bankruptcy because you couldn't make those monthly payments. So EIDL is a lot broader with what you can use those funds for. but it's kind of like those recurring, like fixed debts that you've got other than payroll. And there's a whole host of things in there that could qualify.
I've had a couple of questions that are around this next one. Can you go a little deeper into the definition of an agricultural enterprise?
Yes. And so there is a definition that's in, and we can share that out, what the exact definition is in the code. But kind of a simple way that I tell people is, if you file a Schedule F on your taxes, you're not eligible. So if you're claiming farm profit and loss, you're not eligible.
Let's see, we've already answered the next. Have you heard anything about the tax implications of the PPP?
No.
Okay. Okay. Are payments to 1099 contractors included in the PPP payroll?
We are still waiting on clarification for that. We know that the businesses can claim some of those expenses, and the independent contractors themselves can apply for some funds. So we really, we've got to wait on the actual operating procedure to come out to kind of get in the details of that. So just hang tight. We'll have it just any time now.
Okay. Will the $10,000 just appear in our account, or will we be notified in some manner? How does that take place? Do you know?
I certainly hope that they're going to get some form of notification, but because none of them have happened yet, we don't know.
Okay.
So we just don't know.
All right. I'm a family business. I have my husband and 2 children working. I don't use other employees. I do pay them a small amount, though. Would I be able to include them as employees?
I believe that's going to have to be determined by the lender.
Someone said they saw the rules that state that sole proprietors cannot apply until April 10th.
Hang on, let me go back and see what that says.
Yeah, it says for April 10th, independent contractors and self-employed, but it states that sole proprietors can apply on April 3rd, but they really haven't told us how to different.
Well, so like
separate
sole
those,
proprietors
so.
is just the way your business is structured. So, you may be a sole proprietor, but you've got 10 employees. If that makes sense. I mean, you could be both, but you could also be a sole proprietor that's, I don't know. Yeah, the language is confusing.
We'll get more clarification.
That's right.
On that.
That's well, it's coming.
All righty. Is there anything a business should do to prepare for a meeting with their banker about the PPP?
So I would say take a look at that application form that Treasury has provided. And that was, again, if you just, I have a link in the slide presentation, which will be sent out, but just Google US Treasury PPP application and it'll take you right to it.
Okay, I think this question is a little different than the earlier one, so I'll go ahead and read it. For a company that has employees and also pays their owners as guaranteed payments, do they apply on April 3rd or April 10th since they're technically self-employed?
I say you're just ask your lender.
Okay. Is there a list of SBA lenders for the PPP?
So yes, but it's not comprehensive, because we know, like if you get on our district website and you can see our resource guide, what you will find in there are the lenders that have some form of a delegated status, like whether they are express lenders or they have preferred lender provider status. The list that's available right now is not comprehensive, and especially because we're adding new lenders like every day. So the thing is what I suggest to people is you likely have an existing business relationship with a bank that handles your business accounts. They more than likely are an SBA lender. So you would just need to, check with them first. We are working to try to get a comprehensive list for the state of Kansas. We don't have it yet. If it becomes available, we will post it. We don't have it at quite this time, but do check with your existing lender now.
I have two questions in a row that really ask the same thing. So can you clarify the $100,000 cap? Is it saying that you can claim up to $100,000 max for each employee, or is it saying you cannot include anything on the employee earning more than $100,000?
I don't know. We're going to need the clarification that's in the procedure for that.
Okay. What if I own a restaurant and have 3 full-time employees and 3 part-time employees? Does the PPP cover both groups?
Christy, or Janelle or Michael, do you know, are they having to use the full-time equivalent calculation from Department of Labor?
I would assume so.
That 2 part-times equal a full-time, and however that works?
That's the assumption I made. I've not seen that in any of the Treasury information, but
yeah. So Treasury,
yeah.
I haven't seen anything from Treasury that says how it's calculated. We have been going off the assumption that it's the Department of Labor calculation for what full-time equivalents are.
Okay. Can you please further define the 8-week time period regarding the PPP?
I can do my best. So what it is so they're saying that it's 8 weeks from the time that the loan is dispersed. I'd like to go back and read in the fact sheet a little closer, because I think that there is some possibility that you can go back to February 15th and kind of, I don't know if it's like a reimbursement status or what. We're going to have to read that closer. But the idea behind it and where it says from the time of disbursement is that when you get that loan, you're going to keep those employees on payroll for the next 8 weeks, so that they are not drawing unemployment. So whether you're open or closed, you would need to be paying those employees for 8 weeks.
Okay. How are real estate agents considered?
That's you, Christy. I'm going to ask you that one.
I'm not 100% sure. I would think most real estate agents are like on 1099 contractual, I would think. It probably depends on how they're paid. If they're just paid strictly commission, or if they have, so I think in that case, I'm looking at the guidelines. I think it says, for sole proprietor, independent contractor, wages, commissions, income, or net earnings capped at 100,000 on an annualized basis. So I'd probably, that's how our commissions would fall, I would believe.
Okay. This one says that I heard the interest on unforgivable loans is only 0.5%.
That's true. On the Paycheck Protection Program, that's true.
Okay. What if you let someone go during this period for reasons other than economic distress, like they're just not doing their job?
That's what we don't know. So we need to see the procedure for that, because there's a whole lot of scenarios in my mind, but my mind is not what counts. So I don't want to give any misinformation. We'll see what the rules state on retaining and rehiring or hiring new.
Okay, the next 2 questions actually were ones we previously answered. So this one, are churches eligible for PPP?
The secular part, if they offer secular social services, Without seeing the full rules, I can't say whether like just regular church staff would be eligible. We're going to need to see the full rules that aren't out yet.
For companies that use a PEO, do payments to a PEO count as payroll and benefits, or will that business be unable to apply for PPP due to W-2s being issued by the PEO?
I don't think we have the exact information.
Okay.
And I really do, everybody. I wish we had the details and the rules. Hopefully we have those before the next call on next Monday.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of these rules are changing really rapidly. So
They are, which is why we want to be very careful to not speculate.
yeah, we really appreciate your help in trying to clarify as much as we can. Can independent banking consultants help a business? I think that's under that EIDL.
With
Does that help?
applying,
Yeah,
like a
that's all it says.
loan service provider.
Guess I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the question, but I mean, if the question is, can somebody that does like loan packaging, yes, they can. There would be, if the bank, I mean, there wouldn't be, I wouldn't think there would be any reason that they could not. But I also think that there will be caps on fees and things like that, like we do for our regular stuff.
Okay. Will payments be deferred for 7A and or 504 loans?
Christy, on 504, 7A, yes. Christy, are 504s deferred also?
Yes, as long as they haven't been purchased or
On the
the venture
secondary?
hasn't been bought. Right.
Right.
As long as they're in regular status, they're actually going to pay the payments for 6 months.
Yeah, so that's something we actually did not get into during this, but another part of this is small business debt relief. And so we sent something out to the lenders earlier this week that I don't even remember what day we sent it, but in any case, yes, on 7As and 504s, we're instructing them that that's 6. They need to defer those payments for 6 months. And Christy, tell me if I get this wrong, but SBA is going to start making the payments to the banks on behalf of the borrowers that have those loans, principal
Correct.
and interest.
Correct. That's how I understood
Right.
it.
So we're going to make the payments for people that already have those loans.
Right, for 6 months.
For 6 months, right. And there's also a lot of incentive there too to do some new loans. So that, I mean, that's something else for folks to take a look at that are in a different position. Let's put it that are in a different position, not necessarily hurting because of all of this, but maybe they have an essential business that's actually needing to grow some. Because there are some out there. So the traditional 7A loans, there's some pretty good deals on those right now.
Okay. It looks like we only have time for one more question. Those questions that we don't have time for during this presentation, we will work with the SBA to get those answered and out to you as soon as we possibly can. Last one is, how is the PPP program tracked for forgiveness? Is the bank inputting the requests? How does that all work?
So I think it's kind of maybe a two-part answer. So as the borrower, you will have to request forgiveness of the loan. So the bank's not going to automatically do it. You're going to have to request that forgiveness. And part of that, you'll have to provide your documentation of how, of what your payroll expenses were and the other qualified expenses. So that may actually answer both questions, but I will tell you that these things are going to be up to you and up to your lender. But when we're talking about having some of these multiple funds and making sure that you're maximizing your benefits and that you're going to be able to get, the most forgiveness possible in that PPP loan. I talked to a couple of accountants and some bookkeepers over the last couple of days, and just kind of, brainstorming and talking about these things. And, a good practice would be to potentially to have separate accounts, like you're putting your economic injury funds that you receive in this account, you're keeping your PPP funds in this account, so that you have some very clean breaks and can easily demonstrate what funds were used for what. That'll make your record keeping easier. Definitely talk to your accountant, your bookkeeper, whoever that can help you make sure that you're not commingling those funds or inadvertently, making payroll out of the idle funds, because once you do that, you can't get that back, kind of thing. So make sure that you're kind of keeping those separate and tracking it. You will have to ask for the forgiveness from the bank. It's not going to be automatic.
All right, that looks like we're about out of time. Thank you so much, Sarah, and your team for helping with all of this. We understand that the rules are changing rapidly, and appreciate all the effort that you're doing to get the information out as quickly as you can.
Well, we hope to have more for you on Monday.
Certainly, it sounds like tomorrow we'll have more information as
well.
well.
Yeah.
So look for that information. Again, we will be posting the link to this recording. I won't send the actual recording out because it's really quite large, but there will be a link out later today or early tomorrow, along with the slides, the Q&A questions as soon as we can get those answered. And then other links that have been mentioned in the website will be posted as well. So keep an eye on our KansasSBDC.net page. When you go there, there's a large button, learn more about COVID response, and you'll find a really good list of resources there. So thank you everybody for attending. And thank you to the presenters and the staff behind the scenes working on this, and have a great rest of your day.